You didn't hear this for the cool kids.
That's what I hear on the bus that was available. Are you good?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
This is my first time in here since it's on the renovation. I know, it's so beautiful now. He's talking about goats. I would love to see one. I want to see Yes, absolutely. Very, very familiar place. No, it's up high.
$100 million for Teaching Field. That's why you
Hey, everybody. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. It's great to have people in the building and to have everyone visiting, friends seeing each other, people who are working in other places, and people who don't get together as much as we should all be here together. I'm John Sharp. Nobody calls me that. Everybody calls me Bud. I'm the Assistant Director for Research here at the Center for Louisiana Studies. If this is your first time to the Roy House, welcome. Thanks for coming here. If you're here because of a class, because you're being made to be here, thank you, Dr. Rabelais, for making that happen. This is a talk by Hali Dardar, and this was going to happen last week, and it was rescheduled. Part of an ongoing series of talks here at the Roy House, part of our new programming effort to have voices that we have not heard as much of as we should have, and to have our very knowledgeable and esteemed friends grace us with their presence as well. Before I read the full bio here, I want to say next week on Thursday will be another talk, and that is Mardi Gras songs with Dr. Barry Onsley from 5 to 7. And some of us are exposed to this pretty regularly, but if you're not, it's a real treat. So come and check that out too, and hope you get in the Mardi Gras spirit. So Hali and I were talking earlier. She grew up originally in Golden Meadow area, and then moved to Sunset. We were talking about not a lot of Dardars in Sunset. Hali is a new media enthusiast, interaction designer, and member of United Home and Nation. Her work supports process development, community-based design, language revitalization, indigenous media, and memory documentation. She holds a BA in print journalism from LSU and an MA in arts, culture, and media from the University of Groningen, which is a very good school. So the title of this, Design Elements for Language Vitality, and she made a point to say in some of our correspondence that this will serve as a starting point and provide further readings and case studies in this. It's also, I'm sorry, it's going to just kind of be like this. It's not bulletproof glass. Hali is the co-founder of the Homa Language Project and Bulbancha Public Access, and project manager for language vitality initiatives at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. So with no further ado, please welcome Hali.
Thanks so much, everybody. I'm going to turn this on so I can get a copy of this. All right, here we go. There we go. Everyone hear me? Good? All right. Shout out to the back room up there. You guys are doing it. Let's see if we can get this to work.
Recording in progress.
All So hi, my name is Hali Dardar. I think we've already done a lot of this introduction work. So yeah, really glad to see you. I am the collaborative. Actually, I can't see the slides from this angle, so one more second. I'm going to do like a. Is that good? Can everyone still see if you do it that way? That's great. Yeah. I make slides for me as long and also for you guys, so I appreciate it. So yeah, and thank you so much, Clyde, for introducing me. We've covered a lot of this. I think my interests are mostly in collaborative design. So how do we not only create something, but how do we create something collectively as a group of people who all bring different ideas and backgrounds and perspectives into what we're doing. I'm really interested in that. I'm also jazzed about organized cultural participation. So this idea of, who are the people who are making these things happen? The dances, the language work, there's someone behind all of this organizing it and structuring it. And sometimes it's a collective, sometimes it's 2 or 3 people who are really jazzed. But understanding what it is that motivates those people and how do we maintain them. And I'm also interested in online language reclamation. I see that, the kind of like final frontier of agency is in a digital space. Well, it's kind of close, but when I started this back in 2013, it was the Wild West. You guys remember the internet back then. But it's really a great spot where a lot of language reclamation is happening globally. So I started this project in 2013, this kind of language quest through the Home Language Project. It began with just an idea with a few people within tribal members who wanted to make a difference. And it's grown to a dozen tribal members who want to make a difference. It's a really slow projection on that. I'd love to talk more about that another time. Another thing that we created was the launch of public access, which was the question of what does Indigenous identity look like in the Gulf South, and how do we define the Indigenous cultural aesthetic, and what is the process to articulate that? Are some of the things that whole bunch of public access looks at through performative art pieces and new media art. And then finally, my day job. Since 2020, I work with the Center for Folk Life and Cultural Heritage with the Language Vitality Initiatives. This is an initiative that was started to support Indigenous languages worldwide. So we support Indigenous and minoritized languages. We provide training programs to help with language documentation and language activism. We do incubator projects that help, if someone has a really great idea that can scale to other communities globally, we support small ideas and incubate them to transfer them to other communities also. We do networking work, so we're really charged about trying to connect languages outside of linguistic language families. So different groups across the United States and across the world who may be having similar challenges, but may not meet each other just because they're in a different language scope or sense. So providing networking opportunities for that. And then also advocacy. So we do a lot of advocacy. Sometimes, people on the Hill ask questions. They need an understanding of where to go to, and so we help network people to advocate for what languages need across America. And I just want to also thank everyone for joining us here today. Some of you guys are here under duress. Thank you. I don't know if it's duress. I mean, you signed up for the class. So you're about this. But I just also want to acknowledge that it wasn't full participation. And so if you're here not under full participation, I recognize you and thank you for your presence. If you're here under full participation, I also thank you for being here tonight. There's a lot of things you could have been doing tonight as we thaw out from between the freezes. I really appreciate taking the time to be here today. I know some people in this room are speakers and learners of languages, and you're coming with that perspective of, how can I take what's going to be talked about today and provide it within my own community. Some people are coming as cultural enthusiasts. I enjoy walking around the Roy House, and I assume other people do too. So if you're here for the wine and cheese, we also thank you. But there is no wine and cheese, but we thank you for being here. And then lastly, if you're a student, if you're doing some sort of research, if you want to get into cultural work, or if you're already existing within the language sphere, language work, thank you also for being here. And we're hoping that something helpful will come from this. So today, I think there's a lot of different ways I was thinking about doing this talk, but I decided that it's the new year, you know, at least, I don't know, I feel like Louisiana New Year's really starts after Mardi Gras. But we're kind of in the newish year section. We're trying to consider what are these resolutions that we're making. And a lot of times they have to do with, you know, just kind of taking a step back from what we're doing and thinking about how can we do things better, or how can we reconsider what's happening. So January is really a time for design. A lot of people are kind of editing designs within their own life, editing designs within, you know, getting Q1 goals out or something. And so there's a lot of like thought about this kind of stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, and getting a little creative, getting a little out there, getting a little, you know, Mardi Gras, putting on your suit on, you know, trying to think about, you know, creative ways to solve problems. So today is kind of an invitation to do that as a collective together. I'm inviting everyone today to come together, and we're going to collaborate on 3 pieces of terminology. I'm going to introduce 3 terms, and thinking about those 3 terms, and I'll give a few prompts too for us to think about, and think about different ways we can design using those 3 terms. A lot of times there's a sense that within design, what you're working to do is, you know, improve something or make a tangible physical output. But a lot of times within collaborative design, half of the battle is just getting everyone on the same stage, getting a place where everyone has the same opinion or experience around a certain thing. So today I'm looking, you know, we're going to look at a few different realms around language planning, but the goal of today is for us to come together and get a shared view of at least 3 things and see where that takes us in collaborative design as we design the future of language within Louisiana. Why design? Ooh, that's really hard to read. You know, I showed this to my mom last night because I'm a child that still shows her presentations to my mom, and she's like, that's too hard to read, Haley. And I agree, mom's right, that's too hard to read. But why design? You know, there's a lot of different ways to look at the perspective of language work. Sometimes you come to it from a historical sense. Sometimes you come to it from a cultural studies sense or a memory care sense. But I would like us to think about it in this January time from a design sense. There is an amazing amount of things that are designed. So right now we're going to do the first collaborative exercise. Everybody's going to close their eyes. I'm going to close them together. Just kind of cleanse your eyeball palette. And then when you open them, I want you to see what pieces were created by nature, or natural pieces within the room. So everyone open up their eyes. I don't see a plant. The point of this is anything that wasn't created by nature has been designed. Everything that is not nature has been designed. And this has been designed for some reason, for some purpose. Sometimes that purpose is directly related to us or has us in mind. Other times that purpose is despite us or absolutely does not have us in mind at all. Sometimes that purpose obstructs us, and sometimes that purpose just completely overlooks us. But as people who have the agency to design within the language space, we're able to make these changes within the very tiny little place that we research and work. And so the quality of design is also the quality of life. If you're not considered within the design of things, then your quality of life is going to be much, much lower. So I want us to think about that and kind of go home with this understanding of like whatever we're doing, we're either increasing or decreasing the quality of life of the people who are interacting with the things that we create and design. Within language, there's a lot of places for design within language. These are, just off the top of my head, these were some realms, I'm going to call them, that are kind of rife for design. Language planning, especially like in an organizational sense. Language acquisition, what you decide to learn or acquire. The language environment, even if you're not working directly in language, you're working in a cultural or historical sense, you're creating or you're around or you're shaping the environment that language has to survive in. Language users. It's possible to, as we know, to stop people from speaking languages. But it's also possible to encourage people to do that. And what are those relationships between that? And then another place is engagement. People may be speakers, but they may not be connected into using the language or interacting with it. No. This always happens. It's not showing me. I think we're missing something. Oh, we're missing something that's not important. We're gonna get to that later. There are 3 bubbles. Just know that I did put 3 bubbles. Google is not allowing me, did not design this so I can put. There's another one here that you cannot see. But today I want to introduce 3 concepts for us to talk about. 3 concepts that can be useful when we're thinking about designing within the language space. Let me try to refresh. Let me try. Oh, now it's coming out. Okay. That's all it needed. I think I've made it worse. Don't know if there's anything we can do, just wait. Let's see. I can talk about what these images should be. So some of the things that I'm trying to braid together with this. Oh man, it's back, yeah. Just needed a little faith. I just needed to believe it was gonna go. Let's see if this works. Yes. Okay. Go computers. So I want to braid together a few pieces for each one of these pieces of terminology that we're talking about today. I want to talk a little bit about some of the feedback, some of the places that, the concepts or the feedback or the things that people may comment that make you understand that, hey, I think I'm in one of these realms. I'm in a place that seems like it's a design challenge that's happening. So some of the feedback that may trigger you to think, hey, this is something this is a design issue that we can think about when we design mine. The next thing I'm going to do is kind of LeVar Burton, give a little reading rainbow moment. I'm hoping that this talk is going to bring us to the precipice to a lot of rabbit holes, but we're not going to go down them today. We're just going to get to the point of them. I'm going to give a shout out to a few different references that I really like, that I would encourage. Most of them are open source. And then I also have a QR tag for the bibliography where you can go and click and get to all of these at the end of the presentation too. But just kind of telling you where to go beyond the precipice of what we're talking about today. The goal of today is to make sure, is trying to get everyone in this room on the same page, and hoping that people may want to go deeper, or this stuff may not be new to everyone, and that's okay. It's new to us, as in this instance of people who decided to be here today. The next thing we're going to do is kind of think through a few design challenges within that. These are going to be like questions for self-reflection. You can take pictures of them and do them at home instead of scrolling through Facebook at the end of the night. You can write them down. You can take a moment here. But just thinking about different things of ways that you can incorporate this term into your own work. And then finally, I'm going to give a snapshot for each one. Some of the things that some designer or some design that's really great, who's using this term in a really, really rad way. All right, let's get started. The first term we're going to talk about today is domains. These are some questions, or this is some feedback, or these are some thoughts that people have that cue me into the idea that we're in a design place, or we're in a design challenge moment. When I hear people say, we need fluency now, we understand languages need to be saved, and we need to work on it, we need to get everyone fluent this minute. What's our timeline? Are we talking about a 1-quarter thing? Are we talking about a 2-quarter thing? How can we incorporate this to make it happen? A good quote from that is that, thinking about language as an old growth forest. It takes 300 or 400 years to build this. It might take 2 generations to cut it down. It's going to take 300 to 400 years to build it again. So when we're thinking about things in these time frames, just remembering and kind of backing up and saying, hey, it's okay that we're making minor progress. We're still growing forward on stuff. Another thing that people say is how do I know when I've learned enough? What is enough? How do I know, what do I say when I say like, can I say I'm fluent? Can I say that I understand a language? You know, we have like the tiers within education of, you know, like, you know, like the official standardized levels of language, but how do you feel that within your soul? How do you know that you have the language that you feel like you need or you feel confident with? Another thing that happens is that people need to develop curriculum. This is a massive need within anyone who's teaching language in an organized sense. They want to come up with a plan that can be used and replicated throughout the years, and they need to understand or design that in a way that's helpful. If you're hitting one of those, you are in the realm of language acquisition. Language acquisition is the process of gaining sufficient language skills through planned and connected steps. So this is how do you acquire language? How do you get it from something that you understand that you need to know to being within the heart and soul of yourself? Here's some, you know, usually when you're getting into those sticky challenges that you might hear in the beginning, they usually filter down into a few of the same design questions within language acquisition. And you know, how these manifest into designs are different for absolutely every language. But usually you're trying to you're answering or approaching the question of what do we need to acquire to function within the language? And then what is the learning process to gain what we may need? So how do you know where to start with this? That's misaligned. You know, I'm doing a design thing and I can see the issues. Grace, y'all, please. But I want to introduce you to the concept of domains. If anyone who's working in language here, this is probably not a new concept. But it is something that's really great to talk about and think about as a collective as we try to discuss the future of language within Louisiana. A domain is a specific context for interaction which holds a definable addressee, setting, and topic. A lot there, but you know, this is a domain for language. We have addressees, we have a setting, which is the beautiful Roy House and a formal presentation, and we have a topic, which is just a researcher talking about their work. Another domain is interacting at the grocery store. You have a addressee, probably the teller. You have a setting, which is like a public grocery store place where you're trying to get everything done as soon as possible. And then you also have a topic, which is, you know, how much do you owe this person? Thank you for coming. Would you like a bag? You have quibbling for parking tickets on an online teletree. That's also a domain. I like this quote a lot. And this is from, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't read in Rainbow here. Can't see this in the back, but this is an excellent book. If you're talking about language acquisition or general like language planning and strategy, Justina Oklo's and Julia Salabank's book, Revitalizing Endangered Languages, A Practical Guide. It came out in 2021 through Cambridge University Press. It's open access, which I love, which means that you can go and download the full book for free. So I would highly recommend this book. But in this book, there's, you know, Thomas writes this, a killer of a sentence. People assume that because schools are so good at killing languages, they can also save languages. Ooh. Therefore, minority communities perceive teaching their endangered language in the school as the objective and or the main tool of language revitalization. I get that every time. I get church chills when I hear that, you know. And I don't want to, as I sit here in a research education institution, I'm not saying that, you know, teaching language in school is not a great thing. But I like this quote because it really challenges that domain, and it really challenges the idea that all design has to happen within that domain. And so this is kind of a self-reflection moment to think through, or something that you can use to kind of incorporate the idea of domains within your own work that you do. What domains do you use? Regardless of what language you may be in, what domains do you find yourself in? Do you find yourself interpretive dancing? Do you find yourself
reading books? Do you find yourself quibbling with Chase online banking? What are the domains that you exist in, that you interact in? And then thinking after that, what domains can I acquire in that language? I think I will always quibble with Chase banking in English. I mean, that just feels right to me. But I can change my computer settings into French or Choctaw and change that domain if I wanted to. So what domains do you feel like you can take and put into this new language? And then the next question is, what are the interactions that you would need to have to make that domain fully in the language, that your target language? And then the next question for a learner is, what do you have already versus what do you need to learn to get those interactions to make that domain in the language? An example of someone who does this really, really well is Natusi Fish. He is a Blackfoot language instructor. He works at the University of Montana, but also the community language school at St. Ignatius in Montana. And he does a lot of work with domain-based acquisition. I worked with him on a project last year. And something that really stuck with me was that he encourages the bathroom as the first domain. The addressee is always usually yourself. You usually just I personally monologue in the bathroom. It's a place that's a vulnerable place. It's okay if you have labels, or posters on the wall across your bathroom. There's a lot of great verb-based things that happen in the bathroom. Even just brushing your teeth, you put something, you open the tap, you brush your teeth, you put it back down. There's a lot of rich interactions that you can do, and you don't have to have an interlocutor. You don't have to have someone else to be part of your bathroom experience. Thinking about that and thinking about, what are the simple domains that you can take over in the language and how can you do that immediately? This QR tag, again, it'll all be on the bibliography at the end, but this QR tag brings you to one of Natusi put together a YouTube video kind of explaining his design process. At the time, he's talking about his design process when it goes into building, he builds a lot of card games within languages, but it's the same process that he's building of how do you create a domain, what are the chunks that people need to know, what are the grammar that people need to know, and how do you link it together. So if you're in the process, if you're a curriculum person, definitely check out Natusi's work. All right, term number 1, rock and roll. This is a feeling, this happens a lot. And I think this is something that people don't necessarily talk about in language work. There's this understanding sometimes that, anytime you're doing cultural work, you need to stay together like a basketball team. Everyone wears the same equipment, everyone, is interested in working together collaboratively, and that's just not how my family functions, and that's just not how I don't think any other cultural group actually functions. A lot of times people have this feeling when they're working where they're really into what they're trying to do, it's connected, they want to learn language, and they absolutely cannot stand any of the people that they're working with. Feel it. Sometimes it's good to just say it, And because it's such a taboo thing to say or talk about, it usually ends up those people end up just kind of spinning out or grinding down or somehow, just leaving language because, they can't feel like they're finding their group or they're finding their community in it. One of the things that contributes to that spin out is they're not able to talk about it. Or there's this feeling a lot of times that people have that they're the only person going through this thing, that everyone else is having fun and I'm not, and I must be the problem. It's okay to not have fun. It's okay. There's a lot of things going on with language learning. Languages, a lot of times, were intentionally taken away. And so language is a really interesting spot to do cultural memory work and community organization because you have individual people who are going through processing collective trauma, and it's all coming out in the way that they're talking to each other. And you're learning language in that process. And so a lot of times, people are going through their own struggles while they're learning or while they're teaching even. And you're having to absorb all of that or navigate your own feelings while you're also navigating whatever's coming at you in all these different spots. Another place, kind of similar, but kind of related, you know, after you feel isolated, one of the next things you might want to do is like, I want to create an index of speakers. We need to understand who's speaking and how's it going, and like we need to just have a better sense of what our community is. All three of these questions, or all three of these kind of challenges or sticky feelings are coming in the area of language users. Users are the individuals, the collective groups, the organizations, and their network of relationships that communicate information using the language. So this could be the individuals, this could be you know, Alliance Française, other organizations or structures or, you know, corporate entities, networks of people, policymakers. These are the people who are using the language in some way. And usually, you know, the trickle down from that initial feedback, you know, when you're going into designing within the user space of languages, you're usually designing around one of these two questions, which is who is using the language, how, and in what domains, and then what are the socio-emotional perspectives of the user? How are they feeling about what they're doing? Are they happy? Are they not? Are they burned out? Are they overly charged? And so the term I want to kind of interject into this space as we design is language relatives. These are individuals or entities who are connected to you in a relationship by the shared connection of language. This term is a very related and similar term I feel like I need to give a shout out to is the idea of language citizenship from Strode. It's a useful concept and I like it, but it misses the part of a connection, of a socio-emotional connection. It's more of thinking about language as like being part of a nation rather than being part of a community or like there's a spiritual tie to things. So that's why I prefer the term language relative over language citizen. It also gives us the idea that you can somehow renounce your citizenship, which is very, I disagree with. I think it's very hard to do that. If you want to learn more, if you want to go further down this rabbit hole, I would, if you're feeling, especially if you're feeling any of the things that I said today, you should definitely check out the book Language Activism, Hali Dardar, 2021, also open source, so available online. They have a really great concept I didn't have time to go into today called the imaginaries versus the ideologies. And it really helps define that difference between people who are trying to create change through activism and what it feels like to come up against some barriers while you're doing that. It's very validating. It feels like a nice, cool sip of lemonade if you need it. But one of the things that I think language relatives really does get right is what I was talking about a little bit earlier about the collective emotion that comes into language. A lot of times you decide to learn language because you have some sort of cultural, familial, community tie to it, and it's very strong. It's something that you feel within your soul or within your spirit. And any time that there's any conflict or something that feels like a threat to that string, it feels like a threat to your being. And it feels like people are overreacting, or it feels like you're getting hurt in a place where it doesn't belong. Jacob Manitoba Bailey from the Soft Language Program put it very nicely. Contradictory emotions and experiences happen simultaneously within language work. Practitioners may experience both the joy of learning and the pain of multi-generational oppression in the same context. Reflective practice is essential to being able to see ourselves in the greater honesty and understanding with multifaceted forces that influence language revitalization. And so an example of this, if you're feeling these things, or if you're having user issues, or if you want to think about relatives a little bit more, I would suggest taking a look at some of the work that Brittany McBeath, she's a Kanya woman, and she looks into the connection between self-reflection processes and language revitalization work, with the understanding that you need to be able to settle and meditate and work within yourself and work through and do internal designs in order to be able to get to a place where you can interact with others within your language work. Also free and open source. It's like a 40-page guidebook put out by the Smithsonian Center for Folk Life and Cultural Heritage. Woo! But there's a QR tag here. It'll also give you. But one of the things that I really like about that book is they have an exercise on language relatives, which is super helpful to do. And so this is kind of the self-reflection take home is take a piece of paper and you draw yourself in the middle of the piece of paper, however you want to put yourself. And then you take that piece of paper and create a circle for each person or organization that is your language relative. Then you draw a line to connect those people. Who is connected to who? You know, maybe there's like a little cluster of aunties that all hang out together and they talk. Maybe there's this one person way over here who's not involved with them or got in a fight 7 years ago and is still bitter about it. So using the space of a page to kind of map out, you know, like, okay, this organization is over here. These are the people that they work with. They're tied to this person. And then also use colors and line styles to indicate the type of connections. A lot of times we're connected to people, even if it's a negative connection. Think about the connections that are positive, that give you, you know, positivity within your work. But then also think about the connections or people, you know, who are bringing it down, the organizations that are not helping with what you're doing. Creating a map of all of that for yourself is incredibly helpful for you to step back and understand, like, maybe I'm surrounding myself with negative people and all of the positive people that I like working with are outside of that. Or maybe it's me that's the problem. Just the best. But I really suggest doing that exercise. It's extremely helpful. Last topic here. So another thing that happens a lot, or I get a lot of feedback is like, why are more people not getting involved? You create these structures, you create these programs, you know, you understand and you're just kind of active and alive and vibrant, and you understand what it takes to make your language go forward, and you're finding you submit it to the throne of everyone in the community and it just falls. No one's interested, no one shows up to what you're doing, no one else seems to want to carry the torch on stuff, and it can be really frustrating. A lot of times another thing that people say is just like, life's too distracting. I have too much other stuff going on, you know? I just don't have time to incorporate this into what I'm doing. And another place that kind of lets you know you're in this certain realm is when people say something like, we need to do a survey to understand what people want or need within their language work. We need to do an overarching survey and create this report so we better understand the needs of our users. If you're hitting against any of this stuff, you're probably in the realm of language engagement. Language engagement is the passive or active social actions that produce language use within a community of speakers. So it's the stimuli that comes out, it's the festivals, it's the poetry exhibits, it's, you know, the conversations in the grocery store. And when you start designing within the language education space, engagement space, you're usually hitting one of these two challenges. What elicits language use or appreciation? And how are people interacting with the language? And so the concept I want to bring into this space is to like kind of talk about those answers are the concept of a doorbell. I define a doorbell as a publicly accessible first interaction in the user's direct control, which they can create and define an interaction. So when you step up to a doorbell, you are doing a very small thing that you understand, you know, it's been there, it's culturally understood, how do you ring a doorbell? And you do this, and you're requesting from another group or entity the concept of engagement. This is super helpful to think about, that like maybe, you know, maybe people don't know how to enter. Like my parents' house, they, you know, when we first moved to Sunset, we had one front door, one back door, and a carport. And then you know what happens with the carport. The carport gets closed in. And then there's another door that's built onto that. And then that has 2 or 3 doors. There are 5 entryways, doors to get into the house. And they're all locked. And none of them have a doorbell. And so when you approach the Dardar residents, there's always this question of like, can I get in? I'm like, I don't know how to even enter this space. And that can be really confusing. And I think that as we move, that's a physical place that's really frustrating. But I think that happens a lot when we're thinking about digital engagement or digital spaces. A lot of times when we have organizations, we started out with this concept of we have a web page and everyone's going to get to our front page and then they're going to go in from there. But then the website grew and now we have these like program spots and these other places. And no one knows how to enter. No one knows how to get engaged with a place. I think, this is a term that I think we can use a lot within web design is thinking about where's your doorbell within a digital space? Where is a place where people can go, start a first interaction that they are in control of, and then they have the choice to either walk away and never interact with you again, or they're welcomed in and they have more information on some of the stuff in the programs and they can get further and deeper into the work that you're doing. If you're interested in this or you're interested in doorbells, Guy Bonsepe, he's a Spanish designer. He wrote this, he gave this great speech back in 2006. It's Design and Democracy. He talks a lot about the connection between good design and good civil practice. And a lot of that has to do with the transparency or the ability of people to navigate spaces without having someone overlord or walk them through it. This is really hard to get. Sorry, this is not an open source article, but if you want this, let me know and we can figure it out. But this is a great quote from Guy. Design humanism would be the exercise of design activities in order to interpret the needs of social groups and develop viable, emancipatory proposals in the form of material semiotic artifacts. Why emancipatory? Because humanism implies the reduction of domination. And anytime we have a place without a doorbell, we are dominating the space in a way that we're not asking for interaction or we're not making place for that. So thinking about yourself, or thinking about your organization, or thinking about your language practice, do you have a doorbell? Do you have something very easy for people to understand how to connect with you? How are they, even if you have a doorbell, are they communicated? Is it a shared doorbell, or is it the doorbell is in the center of the house that nobody can find and get to? If you do have a public doorbell, does that doorbell connect to further engagement? Does going to that doorbell mean that you're able to get further in and being told about other programs and processes that people might want to get involved in? And then is this doorbell in control of the person who's ringing it? Are people allowed to walk away, or are they, as soon as they ring it, they're kind of snatched and put into the fold and put on this email list that you cannot get off of forever? People need to. A great thing about a doorbell is that people can just say nah and walk away, and people need to feel that in order to understand that they have agency within their own space. So this is more of thinking about like doorbells are, we have individual doorbells, but thinking about doorbells within the idea of an organization, or if any of you guys are representing cultural or community organizations. This is a doorbell that we created within the Smithsonian Center for Language Vitality Initiatives. It's called the Language and Archives Mentorship Program. The QR tag will again bring you to the webpage, but again, it'll be in the bibliography. But the goal of this program was we understood that people within cultural heritage work wanted stuff out of the Smithsonian and knew that there was stuff in the Smithsonian. And we knew that we wanted to help these people. So rather than trying to do a survey, better understand what people needed, we decided, can we design something that's like a very light touch interaction that people can do, where they're able to get what they need, and they give us more information on what communities may want when they're coming to the Smithsonian. So the program is an online internship program. It's an unpaid internship, but it's also free and asynchronous. So we're just kind of leveraging this system that's an easy process that works through the Smithsonian to allocate time towards this project. And the idea is that once a week you have a one-on-one meeting with someone from the Language Vitality Initiatives, and we are your research assistants. We help you with whatever it is that you might need. Some people take that and they know there's stuff in the Smithsonian and they just need help finding it. We screen share, we go find the stuff in the archives and stuff. Maybe we find it and they want more information. we work together to draft emails to different archivists on how to get this information. We've had other people come in and they're not interested in that at all. They're working to create their own tribe's intellectual property policy, and they don't know where to start. So we go through, within our time, we go and we collect other tribes' intellectual property policies. We look at Smithsonian intellectual property policies. And in our time together, we come and we congeal that together and try to find the best practice for them. The thing about a doorbell, and the thing that you need to understand about engagement in general, is that you don't know what you're going to get when you open the door. It might be a missionary, it might be chocolate selling young youth, or it might be your neighbor. You just don't know. And that kind of vulnerability is extremely important. A lot of times organizations try to design out that type of vulnerability, but we cannot have realistic, authentic engagements unless both parties are vulnerable. So thinking about how within an organization you can create something that's maybe very light touch, but it is an open style relationship that can either be built upon or people can leave with exactly what they need. An example, I want to give this one other example of the doorbell is, a personal doorbell I'd love to try to work on is creating a little pin for myself to say that maybe with a little French flag or a little Choctaw flag that says, I'm a learner. So that when I'm going through life, people see that and they understand hey, if they can interpret that pin, maybe they'll think, hey, I can talk to this person and maybe we can have a conversation. Similarly, if a speaker had a pin that said I'd love to practice, or I'm happy to speak French with you. And the great thing about that is that you can take off the pin. Some days you're just not, and some days you are, But thinking about, those are even, we're talking a lot on the organizational level, but as an individual language user, you can also create your own doorbells. So yeah, these are the three kind of terms I'm hoping that we leave here today and kind of discuss as we mingle after this. But it's Louisiana, so I'm going to add a lagna. And this one is, I think it's really important for us to talk about this a little bit more, and that is additive multilingualism. This is a chart from the 2020 5-year estimate census data from the United States. I think that this chart is, I think when we're looking at these levels, I think they're a little bit skewed. I think that, some language use amounts are a little bit higher. But at the end of the day, when people are looking at Louisiana externally on a federal level, this is the data that they're looking at. Regardless of what may be happening within Louisiana, this is what is perceived to be happening within Louisiana. And again, my mom was right, you can't read it. But what you're seeing is this big Pac-Man is English only at home use. That is 92.23% within Louisiana for 2020. For Indo-European languages, which would count as French, we have that as 2.47% of households use Indo-European languages. That could be Portuguese, that could be French, that could be German. For Spanish, we have 3.7% of households use Spanish. Asian and Pacific Island languages, including Vietnamese, we have 1.22%. And then all other languages, including Attakapaw, including Poma, including Chickasaw, Choctaw, Coasati, we have 0.39%. You can take a second and just go. But I think one thing that really struck me about this is no individual group hits significance or statistical significance unless all of the groups are looked at together. So as we're making language policy within Louisiana, we're only going to hit statistical significance if the policy is also supporting Spanish, if it's also supporting Indo-European languages, if it's also supporting Asian and Pacific Island languages. We cannot make policy based on Indigenous languages. We cannot make policy based on Spanish. We cannot make policy based on French. We need to understand and develop additive bilingualism to support all of the languages across Louisiana, or else, you know, we're not gonna have the significance to move any kind of activism forward. And so some questions around that and that significance. Do I champion linguistic diversity outside of my own language experience? What are the needs and strengths of other language communities around me? You'll notice a lot of the examples I gave today were not Louisiana instances of examples. All of the people who are designing these great things are indigenous communities that are outside of Louisiana. And if we ally and we support those communities, we are also able to come into a relationship where we can understand and understand how they're designing and better design our own work. And then how can we create strong policies for multilingualism within Louisiana? So, Yakuke, thanks. That is my presentation. Leave you with So yeah, we could do, you know, a lot of times people want this to be questions, but I'm opening that up. You know, you don't have to make whatever you're thinking into a question. I think we're all here because we have some sort of interest and experience. So if anybody wants to come and say something that's just an expression or a reflection or something further than that, that's also welcome at this time. The bibliography, that'll bring you to the QR tag with the Google Doc with the bibliography, and then my email address is here if anybody wants to comment down.
One of the things you talked about was the sort of the open door policy, that you have to be open to anyone who wants to interact with you. I find that, you know, in cultural work that at some point a lot of people get burnt out from those wonderful and random interactions. Any ideas about, I'm sure that you've experienced this yourself, been around people who are experiencing it. Is there some way to, your thoughts on dealing with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, what I'm hearing there is that maybe the doorbell isn't on the front door. You know, thinking about, you know, because there is that moment. I think when you don't have a doorbell, you end up in, like, having people come in and be part of programs when you're not quite sure if anybody wants to be in a relationship with this yet. And so what I would say there is that there needs to be a wider interaction that's further away from you, that gives you a little bit more boundary to be able to do your work. You know, a good doorbell is something that maybe people are, you know, it's a little bit more than taking a pamphlet, you know, maybe it's taking a pamphlet and being able to contribute, you know, information to a Google form or something. A doorbell isn't coming into the office and sitting down for a half an hour. That is what you're trying to avoid by having a doorbell, you know. And thinking through, you know, a good way to also think about the doorbell is kind of a Mardi Gras throw or something, you know. When you're in a parade or something, you're not stopping with everyone and having a conversation or a chat. You have some sort of formula built in within yourself. Maybe you're giving away like a little bag of beans, or maybe it's beads or something else. It's a token of goodwill that's small, that's short, that's light, and that you move on from. And if you don't have that token, you end up having these conversations or just having, you know, spending your own time and effort in a way that's, you know, that's draining for people. So thinking about it in like the sense of kind of a Mardi Gras throw kind of thing might help design a doorbell that's like not in your office and is also something that doesn't require all of your time and effort.
Yeah, I find this idea of doorbells like super fascinating and useful, because I know in my own experience, just many people, like many friends or kind of people around me see as like, oh, like he's like the French guy, or he's like the Cajun French guy. And so like I've been approached directly multiple times, like, hey, my friend wants to get involved in like the Cajun French scene or like the Louisiana, like what can they do? And like I always waffle in terms of I don't have a direct like easy plug-in answer. It's like I love this idea of like developing like a doorbell as like an easy first step, because it's like I don't fully know what to say all the time besides these kind of larger commitment things, and it's like things that like aren't necessarily like accessible all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, and the people in that moment too, like you've gone through this realization, you're probably over it and you're jaded about it, you've decided to bring your life in this direction, but it's like kind of this come to Jesus moment where people are realizing it's important and they're like laying the future of their own cultural heritage at your feet, you know, and it makes this moment where it's just kind of like, oh gosh, like I can't just say, read this, take this QR code, bye, you know, because it's like this person's having a moment, you know. And, you know, a lot of times you're going to open your door after the doorbell, and this person is going to be having a moment. But designing within yourself of just thinking, like, maybe, you know, within that instance, maybe there's a table français that you just go to one day and talk to and be like, hey, anytime somebody asks, can I just tell them to come here? You know, getting consent from that table, or just, you know, picking one little thing to, like, bring people in that direction and say, okay, this is the starting point for you. I feel you, I see you, this is where you need to go next. And that thing that needs to go next, I think it's really important that it takes effort on the other person's side. A lot of times when people ring a doorbell, it's this understanding, especially like in Louisiana where we're just like really nice. I'm coming, you know, I spent 4 years on the East Coast. It's not like where, you know, people open doorbell like, bye, not my problem. But here we have this idea of like, if someone rings your doorbell, like, you gotta invite them in. Are they hungry? Are we gonna feed them? And we're gonna do all of these things. And so it becomes like a visit from a doorbell ring. But thinking about this boundary and saying, you know, like, not every time that the doorbell rings is it a visit for me to go into visiting mode. And thinking about having something to say in that moment, or having this kind of designed interaction that you can bring them to that makes them have to do the work next, because they're the ones with the enthusiasm, the effort, the passion. They're the ones that are trying to put this somewhere. And acknowledging that and giving them a challenge to do that's outside of yourself. Another great challenge, just, you know, spitballing here, another great doorbell that was created by the Miami tribe in Ohio is their chief got really tired. I mean, he's trying to like run a nation. And people are coming up to him and saying like how important the language program is and stuff, which he wants to validate, but he also wants to like get business done. And so he's decided just to have this program where he carries around bracelets. He carries around bracelets that have 5, 10, and 20 written in Miami language. And so everyone knows that if you see the chief, if you tell him 5 words in Miami, you get a 5 bracelet. If you give them 10 words, you get a 10 bracelet. And so people wear it, you know, the same way people paint shoes red after they've seen Louis, you know. It's this mark of pride of like, first I saw the chief, second I talked to him, third I'm great at the language. But that's another way of just kind of like these personal doorbells where you can encourage language, but then also not waste your own time.
This was really amazing for me to hear, because I have run into every single one of these issues in my own work with Ishikoi. I'm at a place where, you know, it's sort of in other people's hands now, and I just sort of do my best, whatever little bit it is, to be supportive of people who are doing language work with Ishikoi. But Jeffrey and I are pretty much the people who started that project. And one of the things that I really appreciated about this was just the thought about how much is enough. Because, like, for instance, with our tribe, we're dispersed. There's more Ishak people in Oakland than there are in Louisiana because of the diaspora that took place in the 40s. And quite a number of the people who are interested are not in the state of Louisiana. They're mostly academics that are all over the place. So I think that it's pretty unlikely that Ishakar will ever be spoken fluently. But maybe it doesn't need to be. I think that there's like this, I've always said this, there's other uses for the language that can bring people together. So I'm curious to hear about how you could set benchmarks for people developing enough fluency to create community with what little bit is actually spoken.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that, you know, the concept of domains is coming up to me in that sense too, of just kind of like, you know, because the Home Language Project had that same moment, you know, where all, like, because of the, you know, it kind of balloons out to the design of, the quality of life is the quality of design thing, and it's like, the way that language is conserved or celebrated in the United States is in a very transactional, increased economics or commerce type of, funding. There's no base cultural funding for language in the same way, other than like Indigenous preservation work, which goes into federal recognition, and we're not going. But like, because of that design, the idea of what you're trying to do is not taken into account when that design is made. In the same way that, what we're trying to do with the Homo Language Project is in a very similar space where it's just not taken into account. For us within the Homo Language Project, it's been, even as we get language a little bit further, as we develop our dictionary, as we, learn a little bit of grammar, it's been really hard for us to apply it into our work rather than just being kind of just this exercise that we're doing. How do we make it so that we're doing this exercise in Uma? That's been a real struggle for us. I think one thing that's been very helpful is, we started with memes kind of thing, with memes, this idea of like, we're in this group chat together, it's been a decade-long group chat, and we're creating our own little, our own little nerdy cultural, quips and sayings as going forward. And so we started there with that domain of just kind of like, how do we talk about some of the things that often happen within our lives in working on this project, and where do we make that into the place where language is starting? So for example, we have I'm not going to say it, but we have an expletive meme. One of the first things that we translated is just kind of like, how do we express, that, And so that was one of the first things that came back into the world. It was just kind of like, we need to express rage, and we got that. And we also, we use Zotero as like this collective place. And so how do we translate, that into that? And I think, understanding that, one of the realizations that we know is that no one is going to be arguing with Chase Bank in Puma, ever. We're never going to press 5, and we're never going to get that option. We don't want that option. But then, like, that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. One of the places that we realized where this is important, and it really clicked to us, was after Hurricane Ida in 2021. The Home Language Group, most of us are from this coastal area. Most of the coastal area was messed up. And so, we were all dealing with roofs and, families with roofs and, ice chests and, solar panels and, all of the concerns of insurance companies and stuff. And at the time, we asked the group chat, like, hey, why don't we just not for like a month or two? Because, there's a lot going on in our lives. And one by one, everyone in the group chat said, like, no, we need this. This is very important for us. This is the only thing that hasn't been blown away, because we're a digital group. And so the language group kind of shifted. What we did in language kind of shifted at that time. Instead of talking about trying to learn words that already existed, we tried to put down the expressions that didn't exist in the other language that we were trying to feel. So one of the expressions that we felt was sitting outside of your house helpless, watching it move as you can't do anything about it. There's no word for that in English, but that's something that we can express or we can create in Uma, because that's a very Uma experience. It's a very Homa experience to see that happen. Another one is, the guilt of living at a family member's place for too long. These are shared experiences that we can have in Uma. And so it became this idea of like, the experiences that are unique to our people, why not translate those first, or why not focus on those domains, rather than doing the things that we're never gonna accomplish.
Awesome, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I would like to say it's well done. Your service, your delivery, your everything, it was well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for sticking around and talking about it. I'll be around, but thanks guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
if anybody wants to visit the bookstore, it's open. Hang around for a minute. Questions?